Good evening, everyone. And tonight we have a very special guest with us. He's none other than Elder Fredling. Elder Fredling is currently an elder at the Perrine SDA Church. And tonight we'd like to welcome you, Elder Fredling, to our program.
Thank you very much, Sister George, for extending me the invitation to do this. I truly appreciate that. To have the chance to share some of myself with my brothers and sisters at Coconut Grove SDA. So I truly enjoy the opportunity to do that.
Well, thank you very much, sir. And as I said earlier, well, I introduced you as Elder Fredling. So if we can get right into it, I would appreciate that. There was a journey before Elder Fredling. So
Right.
tell us a little about you and how did you become specifically, how were you introduced to the Seventh-day Adventist message?
Wow. You are definitely correct about that. It's been a long journey. As a matter of fact, as I think and reflect about that journey, I would say that if in my understanding, of course, but the Lord knows all, if the Lord hadn't brought me into the United States, I could not foresee in my understanding how I would become a Seventh-day Adventist. Not that, I mean, in the town where I was raised in Haiti, of course, we had a very Seventh-day Adventist church. I had interacted some relatives who were Adventists, but never really ring a bell to me. So, before there was Elder Fredling, there was just Claudel. As you've probably heard earlier, I was pretty much born in Haiti, just raised there until I was about 18 or 19. And then I migrated permanently to the United States, lived with my dad. But in terms of my religious journey, I was, because I attended what I could call Jesuit school, Catholic school back home for my elementary education, French Canadian Catholic school. So I was pretty much directed to the Catholic faith. And then by the time I was 13 and 14, my mom and my adoptive grandmother, they went to Anglican church. So therefore, I migrated moved from Catholic church to Anglican church, and then I could say that this is where a lot of my spiritual journey, slowly, I could say, began. That the Anglican church had more to do with affected me more than my time in the Catholic church, because this is where I forged a lot of friendship. This is where at the age of 14, 13, 14, I started singing classical music, and also getting exposed, played violin for a while, played classical music, sing in classical music and so on in different languages. So I had that exposure in the Anglican church. And then, of course, and I forged some really good friendship that I can say to this day I still cherish. So I was also in my time in the Anglican church. I became also slowly became interested in spiritual matters. Where while I was in the church, I served as a acolyte, or what you call an altar boy. I served as one for a number of years. Very dedicated, very into what I'm doing, to the point where possibly attending theology school or seminary would have been possibly one of these choices, but it never landed there. But I did have some serious connection with the ecclesiastical body of the church, to which would have made it possible for me to go in that direction where I choose, where, where I, if I were to decide to make that decision.
Mm-hmm.
So, that really shaped me, or shaped my understanding to some degree of what I thought church is. Very social church, very influential in my formation to some degree. And I also saw some side of it also having to deal with priests, and other ecclesiastical body, that I realized there are certain things that were happening that were not okay, but I thought were okay
Mm-hmm.
back then. So yeah, so I stayed from, I'd say, from the age of 14 to 19. Pretty much I was in the Anglican Church in Haiti. And then when I came to the United States, because your question is fairly long now, you're asking about the spiritual journey
Go ahead.
before Elder Fredling. Then when I came to the United States, um, so I just came here. But before I came to the United States permanently, I used to come to the United States ever since I was 13 years old. So spent summer vacation with my dad, you know, uh, enjoy the time, and then go back home to continue my study, because my dad was not okay with the idea of me being stable and going to high school in the United States. So he said, you know what, I'm going to keep you back home. And when you get your baccalaureate, or when you get your high school diploma, then I'm going to bring you over, and then you can continue on with school,
Mm-hmm.
uh, which I which I came to appreciate as a great idea, because uh, uh, that has contributed mainly to my intellectual development to some degree. That's given me the foundation that I needed. So when I came to the U.S., of course, my dad is not a Christian, and still not a Christian to this day. But throughout the years, we have invited him to church. He came and so on, but still not has given his life to the Lord yet. So when I came to the U.S., of course, uh, um, the only church, there was pretty much no church activities involved, really. It was pretty sporadic, where people in my household, my my stepmother back then used to go to Catholic church, and I'll just go with her every now and then. But there was no really spiritual thing going on. So, given that I have a very inquiring mind, and also when I came to the, I started attending Miami-Dade, both Homestead and Kendall campus. But over time, I started to, yeah, it was sometime being developed into me back home, but I started to look into spiritual things. And then in looking into all of these, I came across, and I must tell you that that's true, I came across what is called mysticism. Okay. So it's pretty much metaphysics.
Mm-hmm.
I came into contact with these things. And as I started studying these things, they became of an interest to me. And then you may have never heard of the Rosicrucians,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe you have. So I started developing an interest, because what they were selling or presenting to me in the study was very appealing to my spiritual palate. So therefore, I started looking into what they had, they have going, and then I started exploring that side. Also, as I was going to school, at graduated Miami, then going to FIU, I I I I started looking into philosophy, and I majored in philosophy. in where there are certain things in my faith that something that I had learned before in catechism and in Anglican church, I started to question. I started to question, and then of course that line of questioning probably led me more into the teaching of Rosicrucianism, which is pretty much a spiritism or New Age slack type of teachings.
Right.
Just
Wait,
to just put
let's
it
allow me
broadly.
to
Yeah.
interject. Okay. What were you looking for? Because
I
yes,
didn't
you
I didn't know what I was looking for, but from what I understand right now, there is something that I needed, and I could not figure out what it was.
okay.
You couldn't figure out what it was. It's not. Uh, I guess possibly God's way of, since He knows me better, to kind of bring me over. But it was a journey, so I started going into that direction, as I was saying. And then while attending and taking these philosophy classes, I started dabbing into Hinduism and studied Hinduism and studied Buddhism for a bit, or even for a class about world religion. I had gone to a Buddhist temple and asked them certain things. And these conversations were very revealing to me because these are very atheistic religion. They don't believe in a God. They are very atheistic. So in dabbling into these things, I also started dabbling into yoga and became a practitioner of yoga, not just practicing in terms of the exercise, but also studying, being an adept to the philosophy of yoga, being a yogi, Kundalini yogi, and all these things. I started really dabbing into that. Um, and then, as all these things are happening, remember, I'm attending Miami-Dade. I'm attending FIU, but sometimes I do have some classes at Miami-Dade. And then there is I run into somebody called, I don't mention his name, called Maxo. And we struck a friendship. But I could not tell that Maxo was a Christian when we met. But we struck a friendship, and we became very close. In interacting with Maxo, I mean, as young men going on to marriage and, of course, having certain things, many things in common, we developed that friendship where at one point I was able to finally set foot in a Seventh-day Adventist church. I still remember the church to this day, Ephesus French the church. And then, of course, going there, the church was packed with young people, so that was very appealing to me. And then, certain number of pretty young ladies there as well, so that was very appealing to me. I must be honest with you. Uh, but it was just I went there just one time, and then ended up going there every now and then, and the youth at the church were kind of very embracing.
Mm-hmm.
So I was embraced, and then one of these days, I think it was Friday night, they had a service there. But I tell you, as this was happening, I was really planning or looking into participating into an initiation rite with the Rosicrucian. So now you can see the battle going on.
The huge
Now you
contrast
can see the
there.
battle. Now
Yeah.
you can see the battle going on.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I'm not sure what I'm looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but I'm seeing something that promises to give me something. I'm going in that direction.
Right.
Well, at the same time, Max, who became my good friend, came into the picture
Mm-hmm.
and being used by God to pull me in the other direction.
Wow.
He's not aware of that because he doesn't know.
Right.
I'm not aware of what's going on as well.
Right.
But now, sitting down and thinking about this and looking at this, I could see
Mm-hmm.
what
Mm-hmm.
was happening.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I can see what was happening. So and then as I was looking into, initiating, because of course they had sending my documents, my book, my studies back home at home, and I was about to initiate, and then Maxwell comes into the picture, and then suddenly I'm pulled. I go to church on a Friday night,
The
an
Adventist.
appeal is made,
Mm-hmm.
and I stand up and go to the front.
Was it an out of body experience? Were you?
I listen, I just got up and went.
Okay.
Did I fully understand? No.
Okay.
Was it a Bible? No, I just got up and went.
Okay.
I'm telling you the truth.
And
It
how old
wasn't
were
just,
you
I was
then?
about 21, 22. It wasn't just something where you sat down and process and
Mm-hmm.
you said, you know what, I'm going to make that decision because I clearly see
Mm-hmm.
the truth in front of me.
Okay.
No, it wasn't any of that. No, it was none of that. So I just got up and went to the front. I still can see as I'm speaking to you right now, I still can see the face of the preacher. It wasn't anybody dynamic or anything. It was just an elder at the church who made an appeal.
Right.
It was pretty much a home type of evangelism where there was nobody that was called to come in to preach. It wasn't any of that. And then I came to the front and make the decision. And then, the next day I was baptized.
You got
Now,
baptized the next day.
I think that if it wasn't the next day, it was on a Sabbath.
No, I'm just referencing how quick that timeline is.
It was quick. Listen, and I was just going with it. It's not that I knew exactly what was happening. I had no idea.
Mm-hmm.
But even then, now as I'm thinking about this, I saw that it was God pulling me in that direction.
Wow.
I didn't have any understanding. I didn't have all of that. But again, the youth were pretty embracing. And then, of course, to this point, I can't really tell you what happened in me that got me to get up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I can't tell you any of that because I just got up and walked all the way to the front.
A divine doing.
And so on. So, and then of course, I believe I was baptized either the next day or a couple of weeks later.
Mm-hmm.
And then there began my spiritual journey. Now, this is coming into the church. No foundation yet.
Mm-hmm.
I got no foundation.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So now, how in the world am I going to stay? That's the question, because there is really
Absolutely no foundation. Yes.
huh?
I said absolutely no foundation.
No, none whatsoever. None whatsoever. So at this point, the question is, and given how curious I am, I'm gonna have to have some serious foundation to grab hold of my heart, because again,
Mm-hmm.
if I don't stay here, you know where I'm going.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because that's the direction in which that was going.
You seem to have had that wandering mind.
Correct. I did.
Yes. Yeah.
I did. And I still do. I still do. Not wondering to go in the direction, but wondering to inquire and find out. I still do.
Right. Right.
So and then the church had a culture of Bible study, solid Bible study.
So we're talking foundation
then,
now. Okay.
Correct. Now the foundation is not there. Now I'm telling you the foundation is coming in.
Yes.
I told you I came to the church, no foundation.
Yes.
But I'm going to tell you now through what you're going to hear, you're going to see how I stayed in the church.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So as I got into the habit now of going to a Friday evening Bible study, and the gentleman who was doing the Bible study loved doing the Bible study, particularly because that gentleman loved to study prophecy.
Okay.
So, my dear sister, this is when I'm introduced to the book of Daniel. I'm going to tell you this right now. I started sucking up this thing like a sponge. Daniel 1, the dates, Daniel 2, Daniel said, I started sucking up this thing like a sponge.
Was it because of the mystical setting about it that you were so intrigued with it?
Probably could be. Because I came to see that now, the God who at some point I was questioning in philosophy class, or not unsure about, is actually in control of history. He actually knows, like I said, I told you, I soaked up
Yes.
Daniel, I soaked up Daniel to the point where if the man was to be absent, I could stand up and do the study. And I'm not doing this to boast myself. I'm just telling you because fresh-minded, you come in, you're hungry,
Yes.
and you with inquisitive mind,
Yes.
you're looking for something,
Mm-hmm.
but you haven't found. I haven't found it yet,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm here now, and I'm being told these things. I'm thinking about, wow, this is incredible.
Mm.
And then as this is happening, and back then, young men also, I worked as a security guard because that enabled me to go to school and study at a very nice space. I picked up the book, The Great Controversy, and I believe I've read this thing from cover to cover about the history, the French Revolution, and what was happening.
Yes.
And as I'm studying Daniel, and these things are coming into place, the cleansing of the heavenly sanctuary, all these things are coming into place in my thirsty, inquiring, crazy mind.
Right. But can you tell me whether, even at that time, right, where your thirst was being somewhat quenched, were you feeling like there's some type of a relationship was being forged with, should I say, God? Was being forged?
Listen, God was winning me intellectually because you cannot serve God without intellect.
Correct.
It's right there, begins there. It will make its way to influence every single part of your life, but it begins there. So God knowing me as he knows everyone, knowing me why he knows that intellectually I gotta be there. So he picked up my intellect with Daniel, because Daniel was like, I don't know, I didn't know what to do with myself when I started learning about Daniel. This book was fascinating.
Yeah, deep, profound, yes.
Fascinating. I mean, fascinating. You're talking about grits. I should be getting, what you call that, a light meal, and I'm here, and I'm getting PhD stuff.
Yes.
I'm getting grits. I'm getting what? I don't know, spiritual chicken. I should be getting some kind of well, there you go. Smash the potatoes for me and feed it to me. But I'm getting grits.
Yes.
Like you say in my language, I'm getting my moulet, heavy food. And believe me, I felt right in place.
Wow.
And this man loved to study. He loved prophecy. And you can see his passion in teaching prophecy. And I'm there soaking it up. I'm soaking it up.
Yes. So
yes, go ahead.
No, I was going to take us then from you being so intrigued with what is being revealed to you. You are now developing that foundation. Was that enough to keep you?
Listen, prophecy kept me in the church.
Okay.
Prophecy kept me in the church, first and foremost. That's the spiritual aspect. Second aspect, my friend became my friend Maxo. He had a group of guys, and they had what? An a cappella group. Guess what? I had classical training in choir. So automatically these guys brought me in not knowing that. And then when they brought me in, they needed a tenor. And when I started really singing, then they found out that here's the tenor that we needed. Then I kind of fitted right in.
Yes.
So With these group of guys now, I have a social support. We rehearse together, we joke together, and I will go. For example, my dad wasn't 7 day, my home wasn't like that, so I will go to their house. They live fairly close. I'll go to their house all the time, spend time. Their mother to this day, wonderful lady, have a great relationship with her to this day. I'll probably see her tomorrow. Wonderful lady, very embracing, very loving. So these guys became my spiritual family.
Yes,
So
yes,
that social support, I
yes.
was able to be in a group of guys where I could contribute the only thing I kind of knew a little bit about, or I had some training on, which is, singing at 10 years old, singing, singing all
Yes,
these, types of song, classical music.
yes.
And then coming into these guys, after not doing that for so long,
Mm-hmm.
and then these guys now are, bringing me into the group, and we are spending time rehearsing, you know, going over, exercising, working out together, and doing several things together. So now I bonded closely to this guy, still to this day.
Wow, wow, wow.
So you got the spiritual, the intellect satisfied. Now I can tell you that because I didn't understand what was going on.
Yes,
Satisfied,
yes.
and then now the social support in place.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It never crossed my mind a day to leave the church.
I am so
Not a
intrigued
day.
with your journey. It's very it's so empowering.
Now I'm telling
You
you, not
know?
a
Yes.
day, not a day. So this support, because God knows what this young man needs. If he doesn't have it, he's gonna go crazy into some crazy stuff.
Right, right.
So, you know, satisfied my intellectual palate with Daniel,
Mm-hmm,
shake me up, open my mind to this big God,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
and who he seems like everything is planned ahead. He tells you
mm-hmm.
the sequence of what will happen, and they had actually happened. I was stunned.
That is something, yes,
I was
yes. But
stunned.
but tell us, you just said that you've never had any desire or any thought to leave the church, right? But
No,
in your walk though, did you ever have an experience that shook you and shook your spiritual foundation?
I've had yes. Um, After joining the church, of course, my wife right now, who became my friend, and then one thing that really shook me in that spiritual journey is that when our first daughter was born, Priscilla, she was diagnosed. She was born with sickle cell SC4, so she has sickle cell.
Mm-hmm.
So from that point that we learned that it was a serious challenge, because now we're talking about many sleepless nights at the hospital, many things. Um, we have a number of things. It was very challenging, but the Lord knows again. The woman that He had placed by me was the person that I needed in this very difficult time, because my wife had been an Adventist for what, possibly a good 10 years or so when we met. So therefore, this support was very critical, as we had to deal with the challenges of my daughter being born with sickle cell SC. So I would have to say that's and I was just what, 27 or 28, because I got married at 27,
Mm-hmm.
and I think she was born about when I was 28 or so, 29.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Um,
that was something very serious.
okay. Um, so that's family. what about you personally, your character development? Is there anything that you can share with us where you can say that it was only God's doing that helped change you as an individual when it comes to maybe certain character, character
Well,
flaws and stuff?
my character change development uh, 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 um, after I joined the church, my the person who's my wife right now had a lot to do with it, and I must tell you that because when I met her, there wasn't anything romantic going on at first because we're just working together in cyber school. So once the church was able to kind of find out what I can do, church started using me in several ministries. So it is while I was serving in cyber school ministries, then of course I lived in Homestead, my wife lived home, so I would pick up on the way and come to church, and we developed a friendship, and we started doing missionary work together, going to the hospital, praying with the sick, visiting members, a bunch of spiritual activities together, missionary activities together. We will even go ahead and on days of fasting and prayer together. And as these things happen on a regular basis, I'm able to see some marvelous things that God is using us to do at the church. Many, wow, it is so much. Many wonderful things where the Lord will warn us of upcoming things before they happen. Um, a number of things. Going into certain prayer meeting and the Lord opening our eyes, where you'll see angelic being in your presence as you're worshiping God. Wonderful things that if you were to go into a lot of the details of these things, will really be will be wonderful for people to hear. So and also I started taking my spiritual life very personal as well, because I really believe in not only in family thing but in personal spiritual development. So I started getting books, many books, the Spirit of Prophecy, and books about certain things, and doing that. For example, I read in the Bible that Daniel celebrated or prayed 7 times a day. Well, I started applying that. Different segments of time, every 3 hours, 4 hours, where whatever I'll do, I'll stop, I pray. And these things over time really became my spiritual, what you call my spiritual regimen, and help shape me up, to tell the truth. Also, while attending church, also the Lord gave me the opportunity to attend some. I understand now these are a great opportunity because I attended seminars on how to preach and all these things. Back then, I didn't consider them with the intention of ever being the one to use them to preach, but over time I understood why certain things were happening along my way, because
Right,
it's not many times when they are happening you don't see the larger picture.
right.
Okay, but then now I came to understand, wow, this was pretty much part of my spiritual formation, going to evangelistic series, personal prayer, personal studies. So my, just having my own personal regimen
Mhm,
of spiritual things that I do,
mhm.
or that became part of me to this very day.
Okay,
To this
okay,
very day.
okay. So, share with us, the Elder Fredling 5 years ago, right? How have you matured? Say from 5 years ago, how have you changed?